over to Gloria to elevate them to speak.
Thank you.
Yes, I will elevate Miss Christine Stein first. Ms. Stein, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Nod your heads. Perfect. Hello, Mayor Nastandi, council members, and Palm Desert staff. It's nice to connect with you all today. Again, my name is Christine Stein, and I work with Leeds & Son Jewelers in El Paseo, and also serve on the board of the El Paseo Parking and Business Improvement District. So first of all, as it's been many months since I've gotten to connect with so many of you, I want to first start by just thanking you all for all the work that each of you have done. All the council members, Madam Mayor, our staff, you guys have really worked hard these many months. And I just want to first just really thank you for all of that. It's really meant a lot to many of our small businesses, as Savvy mentioned, Councilmember Jonathan mentioned, as a highlight for this month for us. So thank you guys for that. I'm here more specifically to talk about and to echo a request of action that I heard raised during the last council meeting by Councilmember Harnick to request that you are able to agendize, receive, and file an update on President's Plaza. So we were last able to talk about this project and made some great steps on it back in April of 2020. And I was hoping that you all would take this time to really consider getting that ball moving again. I know we had to, put some brakes on it for everything else, but there's a lot of businesses that have been able to stay open, reopen, and are still really utilizing that President's Plaza. And I think it's important that we start to take next steps to get that project out to bid, hopefully before the end of this year, so that we can start to get in plans towards the off seasons for actual construction times. So I just like to ask that of you all today to really keep that in mind. Third point is I also wanted to mention from the El Paseo Business District, we've been hosting some El Paseo Zoom calls, which has been just a public forum for our community to stay connected. And it's been really going well. We started them somewhere around May, as a way to just keep everybody inspired and connected. And I really like to invite you all to come and join us on one of them. I think we're going to keep them going for a while now on a monthly basis. But Thomas Soul, Deborah Glickman, Ryan Stendell, and Kevin Shorts have all been amazing at being a part of these forums to give us updates from the city perspective, from the county's perspective, from the state perspectives, so that our small businesses can really navigate these waters and keep ourselves afloat. So thank you all for all of that. And again, I'm here to support you all, and thank you for your support for us.
Thank you very much, Christine. We appreciate all you do for our community and El Paseo.
Next is Mr. Tony Aguilar. I will elevate Mr. Tony Aguilar. Mr. Aguilar, you have 3 minutes. Mr. Aguilar, you have 3 minutes.
I had to unmute myself, and I take it that we're not on, our pictures aren't on. You're missing out if that's the case. Anyway, my name is Tony C. Aguilar Jr. I have been a resident of the desert for 38 years. I have been a regular at Caselli's restaurants that opened about 33 years ago. A fine restaurant with an outstanding reputation for service and fine food. Over the years, Mr. Michael Castelli, through his efforts, has grown his restaurant to the benefit of his family, employees, and in substantial tax dollars to the city of Palm Desert. To be recognized as one of the top restaurants in the Coachella Valley is no small feat. Mr. Caselli has also participated valley-wide in charitable organizations. I am the founder and chairman of Palm Springs Youth Charities and the Greater Palm Springs Celebrity Golf Classic, which has been in existence for about 28, going on 29 years. He has been a supporter and has helped raise thousands of dollars for the youth of the Coachella Valley. I have high regard for Mr. Castelli. He has worked very hard to get his restaurant to where it is today. The alleyway behind Castelli's Ristorante is an eyesore. It has become a place where the homeless hang out. It is also an area that presents a real security concern for customers, the businesses located there, Castelli's, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Desert Security, and other businesses. I urge this council to turn around fair play here and be supportive of these businesses. They have been asking you for years to do something about that alley. It's not only an eyesore, it's also a security risk, a traffic issue. And I think it is really, really time that you folks do something for these businesses. They deserve it. They've earned it. I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Your comments are duly noted.
Mayor, can we ask staff please get back to Mr. Aguilar as well as Mr. Castelli and update them on Alessandro West project?
Yes, and actually I was going to do a call for action at the end of the meeting. So, of course, but
Yeah.
I'll wait for my call for action at the end.
Well, now is an appropriate time, I
Okay.
think, to request this of staff, and I think it's a shared desire in response to the public input to request that follow-up from staff.
Right. So yes, so the request for action would be look at seeing how we can get the Alessandro Alley project back on our budget for maybe the following year, and look at our other capital improvements and see where we might be able to switch some things out.
No. In public comment, one of the options that we have is simply direct staff to respond to the speaker. And so we can't get into the substance of the issue because it's not agendized. So I'm simply asking staff to respond, to get back to Mr. Aguilar as well as Mr. Castelli and update them on the status of the project. If you want to go beyond that, it would be a request for action.
Okay, right. So I'm going to do a request for action. I had a meeting already, so I'll just wait for call for action.
And Mr. Castelli is on the line waiting to speak. Let me know when I shall move forward.
Okay, we're ready for Mr. Castelli.
Thank you. Mr. Castelli, you're up. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Castelli.
Okay, great. I just want to say thank you to the mayor for getting this on the agenda today. I have been trying for 33 years and been broken promises, false hope from the city council. I went through 8 different terms, so now it's a new term. And a lot of your council members on here know the restaurant. They've been to the restaurant. They know the alley. I know Savvy knows it very well. In 1987, I visited him at the First Bank, came from a restaurant in San Clemente to ask him what the restaurant's gross. So he knows this alley very well. And still no action has been taken. In 1988, I got the call to be able to open my restaurant. And this is the back of the restaurant in 1987. You guys can see anything? No, okay, forget it. I sent a video and pictures, so you will see that in the video. So anyway, in 1988, I went to open. Everything was great. The little restaurant, the old Pig Leg Inn, 30 seats. And Steve Smith came to me and said, Michael, I'm sorry, we cannot let you open until you landscape the back of your building. Great. I knew nothing, 30 years old, whatever. I just want to open, landscape the back. And I asked him why. Well, we're going to put a nice road back here, and we're going to have the entrances to the business back here in the alley. Great, I'm open. So fast track to 93. I bought the building, added the kitchen, another room, and the back of the building. The city says, I'm sorry, you need to architectural review and make the back of the building beautiful, because we are going to fix the alley. We're going to make it beautiful. You're going to make your bit, and it's going to be nice. Great. Again, broken promises, false hope. Fast track 2004, I got another permit to add on back to the alley, and I put arches, Taj Mahal. You made me buy a lot to put a parking lot, spend all this money. And again, promises that you were going to make this alley beautiful. Great. Nothing happened. That was 17 years ago. Nothing's happened in 33 years. In fact, the alley in 1988, which I have pictures, are more beautiful than it is now. That alley is a hazard. You know, call out you to travel it, to go up at least once a week and see it, drive it. Susan, I think this is your district. Am I right? I think you should try and walk it and drive it 3 times, and you should be an advocate for the residents and the businesses in your district to enhance this alley. It needs emergency surgery, and you need to fast track it. And I don't understand why the other alley, phase 1, and then I hear you're just going to stop on phase 2, and phase 2 is not even in the books, which is, I mean, the alley is embarrassing and a disgrace, and I think the council should be embarrassed that they have not. It's a thoroughfare through the city, the heart of Palm Desert, the beautiful Palm Desert. I love Palm Desert. I came here. I put a beautiful building. Businesses around me enhanced the back of their business. You wowed Enterprise in here and probably promised them they were going to fix the alley if Enterprise came in, and of course you made the alley, it's worse. Walgreens came in, great. We got national recognition on that, and you've never touched the alley. It's always been broken promises. And Jean Benson, the mayor, for her, God rest her soul, she promised everyone that her big project before she passed was fixing Alessandra Alley. Well, sorry, she has passed and nothing's happened then. So her legacy.
Mr. Castelli,
Yes.
your 3 minutes are up. You can,
Oh,
if you could wrap it up. Thank you.
okay. Sorry. But anyway, I think you got my point, my frustration that this needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fast tracked and addressed right away through the residents and the businesses. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Castelli. Thank you, Mr. Castelli. We appreciate your comments. City Clerk, are there any other comments to be read into the record, or?
Gloria, do you have any more?
No others waiting.
Thank you.
Okay. Put my glasses back on. Okay. So with that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar for each legislative body convening on this date are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote as indicated on the first agenda of the regular meetings. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, successor agency board of directors, housing authority board, or members of the public request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action under the subsequent section, consent items held over. Are there any council members that need to pull an item? Councilmember Harnett?
Yes, please. L.
Item L?
Yes,
Okay.
please. And I would move the balance unless there are any others. I'll move the balance.
See anybody else? So do I have a motion? So we have a motion to approve the balance with the exception of letter L. We have, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Harnick,
Yes.
Councilman Jonathan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Nastandi.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0 with the exception of item L.
Okay, so item L, consideration to approve a request to extend case number PPCUP 16-102 entitlements for the planned development of Park Village project.
Thank
Councilmember
you. Thank you, Mayor. I am not objecting to continuing it. I just want to mention that this is a project that's been in place now. This January, it'll be 5 years. And it's really an important project, not only to Palm Desert, really to our entire region. It's providing housing for our community members with special needs, adult community members with special needs. So 5 years later, we still have nothing except for a request for continuing. And I just want to make sure that if for some reason, one more time, this comes through without getting the funding and the housing dollars needed to get this going, are we ready to do something so this project is built? I mean, the moment, if this gets turned down, we have got to move on this. It's too important to our city and to our region.
Evening, good afternoon, Honorable Councilmember Harnick. Yes, this item, the additional request being considered or requested to be authorized is to allow the city manager, executive director, that in the event that the funding is not awarded to Allied, that the opportunity be given to, or the authorization be given to the executive director to terminate the lease. At that point, we would then move on and continue the solicitation of interest in the form of a notice of availability to designated entities, which is a new provision that we're required to follow for a new development. And that would be after the December 30th extension that is being requested. That was due to the Department of California Housing and Community Development delaying the award of these funds. They have confirmed via email that the project awards are expected at the end of October, mid-November. So we're anticipating and being optimistic for this project. As you said, it's a great project, and we're hoping that we get awarded for the project.
Thank you so much for the information.
All right.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion to approve?
No, I think Councilmember Jonathan would like to speak.
Oh, I did it again, Councilmember Jonathan. I'm so sorry.
Still have me blocked out, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I completely concur with Councilmember Harnick's perspective on this, but also to say that the last time we asked for an extension, I said this would absolutely be the last one because it's too important of a project. And if one person fails, we need to give others a chance to make it, to succeed, because we do need that in place. The only reason I'm making an exception to what I committed to before is because this appears to me to be just an extension of time to hear back about the awarding of funds. In my mind, if they hear back that the funds were not awarded, I would be extremely reluctant to continue in negotiations or continue in the lease with this particular applicant. I'd rather open it up at that point and see what else comes our way. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Yvonne with Allied Affordable Housing. I was wondering if
Okay, are we ready to
All
make?
right, may I move to approve?
I'll second. Roll call vote, please, City Clerk.
Councilmember Harnick,
Yes.
Councilman Jonathan,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Weber,
yes.
Mayor Nistandi.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on. Print calendar. Okay, so then we move on to resolutions, which there are none. Ordinances, none. None for introduction, for adoption, which brings us to new business. Request for review of Assembly Bill 571, AB 571, which sets local campaign contribution limits unless the city sets its own limits, and discuss the city's desire, timing, and process to set its own limits. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, this item is before you at the request of Councilmember Jonathan. The background on this is that cities have had the ability for a long time to set campaign contribution limits. Very few cities have. So the legislature, in its ultimate wisdom in this last session, basically set a limit of $4,700 per person, per candidate, per year as a default. Cities have the option of setting their own limits, either higher or lower. The state limit goes into effect on January 1st. The city can act before then, or the city can act after then to set the limit. At this point, we're not aware of any cities within Riverside County that have set limits, but there are several cities in Orange County that have, and you see in the staff report, the limits go from $440 in Laguna Beach to $2,100 in Anaheim. We understand that Riverside County, at least there was consideration of establishing a $20,000 limit. That limit, as far as we know, is not moving forward. So the issue is, do you want to set a limit? What would that limit look like? What kind of process do you want to go through in considering that? And another item is potential enforcement. We've looked at, other cities, and apparently, because the city would be responsible for enforcing it, the FPPC enforces. If you stay with a state limit, the FPPC enforces that. But if you set your own limit, you're responsible for enforcement. In the cities that do have limits, enforcement has not been a major issue. Most people comply. So anyhow, the questions before you this afternoon are, do you want to consider setting limits? What kind of a process do you want to go forward with? And open it up for questions.
Are there any questions of staff?
No, but for clarification, as you said, once again, the state has determined it knows best for us. And if we don't do our own, then we must use their defined limit, is what you're saying. Is that correct?
Correct.
So if we don't do anything, we don't investigate this, and we don't determine what our city would like to do, then we must comply with their $4,700. Of course, this whole thing is so absolutely ridiculous, because if you look up what Mr. Mullen does, he gets a jillion donations from all these PACs that are formed. So I think they try to persuade people to think that they're helping individuals by limiting what we can donate individually, but they get all their donations from these gigantic PACs, which are exempt from this law. So anytime the state comes in with their, if I could use the phrase in quotes, their stupid, idiotic laws, we're stuck with all of this, and I'm getting really fed up with it. So whatever we can do to keep our city from being exempt from the state's control, I'm all in favor of that, because anybody can get around all those things just as fast as they possibly can. Clearly, Mr. Mullen gets around it. So I don't like it when somebody's trying to make a law for me, but he exempts himself from it. Really kind of is aggravating. So I would be in favor of us not complying with state law. And if that requires us coming up with our own maximum of $20,000 or $100,000 a person, I'm all for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Weber. Councilmember Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It sounds like we're to the comment part on this agenda. We're past questions.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So, I asked for this to be placed on the agenda because it occurs to me that we should, as a city, be masters of our own fate and have a thoughtful discussion about what is right for our city. As Council Member Weber said, I very much resent the state, Sacramento, presuming that they know better what is best for our city and our residents. And as usual, they create some kind of financial penalty, whether it's withholding revenues or whether it's a payment. In this case, it's like the carrot is, if you accept our directive from Sacramento, because we know better than you do what's good for you, then you don't have to pay for compliance. But if you do something different than we're suggesting, then you're going to have to pay your own compliance costs. Just typical Sacramento, typical state arrogance, in my opinion. Having said that, I'm not prepared to say what's best for our city and our residents. I'm not sure whether we should have a limit that's lower or higher, or accept the $4,700. But I do think that we need to make that decision affirmatively rather than letting that decision be made for us by default. So what I would want to result from this agenda item is that we direct staff, and it can be after the election. I understand now that after January 1st, we can still modify, but I don't want to wait too long because I think residents and especially potential candidates should know the landscape, as soon as possible. So I would ask staff to give us a more detailed report, especially on the cost side, so that we can evaluate A, whether or not we want to deviate from the state's guideline, and B, have a thoughtful discussion if we do want to deviate, what that limit should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jonathan. Councilmember Harnick.
Okay, so I guess I have a question. Could we simply state that we will not have a limit? Would that be sufficient?
That is a very good question, and I will get back to you on that.
Because I'm finding this so interesting. They say we want to put restrictions on all these things, but we won't place a restriction on a political party committee's contribution. To me, that is just so wrong. And they're going to tell you how much you can loan your campaign. So I just wonder if we could just simply state, we choose not to put a limit on any campaign contributions.
Yeah, possibly. And there again, I'll get back to you on that. The other thing would be to just set, a ridiculously high limit, which would have the same effect, although politically it might be a little embarrassing to, adopt a $2 million limit or something. But anyhow, we can certainly look into that.
Our campaigns raise that kind of money. I mean,
Yeah.
city council races don't raise a lot.
Right.
If you find that $2 million donor, please let me know.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Kathleen Kelly.
Thank you. I cannot oppose having a thoughtful discussion about this in the future to determine what's right for Palm Desert. I would be very, very hard pressed to endorse a limit higher than the state default. Because now that there is a state default, I think it would send a very wrong message to our community to suggest that in a city of our size, running for council requires asking people to write checks higher than $4,700. I just don't think that's the right message for a community of our size. But I can agree with everyone that we should have that full discussion at a later point in time so that we are focused on what's right for Palm Desert.
So how would you propose going about to set up a discussion? Because if you set up some sort of a discussion and with respect to what Mayor Pro Tem Kelly said, I think if we educate our community what's going on with the state, then they would understand why we would suggest no limits rather than trying to say because all they have to do is see the facts. Like I said, go directly on Mr. Mullins' site where all the money he's gotten donations from, and you'll see they circumvent their very own rules by getting monies from PACs. And I think our community would do very well with education on that, and they would understand why we would set something like this. So I appreciate Councilmember Jonathan's phrase, thoughtful discussion, rather than somebody getting very aggravated, as I do over this, because I get really aggravated when the state tries to tell us how we should be running our city.
Yeah, what I would suggest is, and I can put in the form of a motion, that we ask staff to place on the agenda in the meeting, January, February, or March of 2021 for our consideration, a potential either compliance or modification to the state guidelines, and to explain to us what the estimated cost would be if we deviate from the guideline, and to confirm that one of our options is simply to maintain the status quo, which we currently have in place, which is no contribution limit. And I guess I would put that in the form of a motion.
I would second that motion. So we
I
have a
just
motion and a second.
pose a question. Would you want to do a study session on this, or do you just want to bring it back into a regular session?
Regular session
Regular
works for me.
session. Okay, we have a motion and a second. City Clerk, will you take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Harnick,
Yes.
Councilman Jonathan,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Weber,
Yes,
Mayor Nistandy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, moving us to the last item under new business, request for authorization for Kemper Sports Management to offer dinner service at Desert Willow Golf Resort. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you,
Good
Madam
evening.
Mayor. Martin Alvarez will handle this.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As you know, in the year 2000, the Desert Willow Clubhouse opened. And when it was opened with breakfast. The restaurant part of it was open with breakfast, lunch, and a limited dinner menu for golfers coming off the golf course after their rounds. As COVID-19 has significantly impacted a lot of businesses, it also has impacted Desert Willow and Kemper Sports Management. As you know, as the restrictions came about for COVID, restaurant service was closed, all weddings, events, banquets, and indoor restaurant use was postponed. As the COVID restrictions have lifted, Kemper Sports is continuing to offer breakfast and lunch and that limited dinner menu in the outdoors environment per the COVID restrictions. And of course, that's caused a significant interruption to revenues. Kemper Sports has approached the city for consideration to allow on a limited basis the dinner service, which has traditionally not been served at Desert Willow. The dinner service would be from the months of October to December on a trial basis, and it would be Thursday through Sunday from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Again, the menu would be very similar to what is being offered now, both on lunch and dinner, limited service, and there will be some chef dinner specials if this is allowed. We think that this is a good option on a trial basis because there is limited seating capacity in restaurants throughout the city. Outdoor service is being allowed, and as you know, this week, 25% occupancy is being permitted for indoor service. And so this would allow our guests, residents, and golfers coming off of their rounds to experience a unique outdoor and a limited indoor dinner service at Desert Willow. This will allow us to, again, offer that service on a limited basis, allow us to recover some revenues during this pandemic that doesn't allow Desert Willow to book any events in essence. So we're recommending approval of this on a limited basis, and we wanted to bring it to you for consideration. Derek White is also with me here on the screen, and of course, he's our general manager, and we'll open to any questions you may have.
Okay, Councilmember Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one question. And by the way, I apologize if I missed it, but I don't think that our interim city manager, Randy Binder, has been introduced to the public. So in case people are seeing him on their screen, that's what you're looking at, is our new interim city manager, Randy Binder. Randy, welcome. So Mr., and I apologize if the introduction was made before, I missed it. Mr. Alvarez, so it occurs to me that the pandemic situation, sadly, is not going away soon. And rather than having this matter come back to us in a mere 3 months, and we only have like 4 more meetings the rest of the year, did staff consider the period of time to go beyond December 31st, say to April or May or even June of 21?
We did, and in fact, we consulted with Derek on this very matter, and we thought that having the ability, to, at least for the fall months, to see where the restrictions are at the end of the year would be a good kind of initial step to follow. And I know that if the restrictions are lifted, Mr. White would be, gladly looking at booking weddings, right, and events and outdoor, dining under the stars, which have been very popular. So that would probably come into play. But certainly, Derek, if you'd like to add a comment to that.
Could I just add to the question before Derek speaks? Because Sabby has pointed out, we have a single meeting in December, and the timing might not be compatible with hearing a report about how things are going. So as a follow-up, my question would be, is there any reason not for us to authorize this through the end of January, assuming it continues to be compatible with state and county standards? That doesn't mean Kemper has to offer the service in January if for some reason they decide it's imprudent or not successful. But is there any reason not to extend our authorization, at least for that extra month?
I think that it would be great. In fact, I tend to agree. Maybe we should just extend the option through June 30th, through the end of the fiscal year. Again, if restrictions lift and we're able to go back to full tilt banquet events and things like that during season and offering special events instead of dinners, then we would rather do that. But not knowing kind of how things are going to open up or not open up, that might be the right decision. We just were indicating this quarter as being that initial strategy pivot, so that we were at least responsible fiscally in trying to run this property the way we feel it should be, of course with city approval, and that's what we're here for tonight. And but yeah, I think that if we extend the option through June 30, that'd be the best way to go.
Okay.
So moved. With the stipulation, of course, that our authorization is contingent on compliance with applicable state and county standards. So moved.
We have a motion and is that a second from Councilmember Jonathan?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, City Clerk, may we have a roll call vote?
Yes, I just need clarification. Is that through January or June 30th?
June 30th.
Thank you. Councilmember Harnick,
Yes.
Councilman Jonathan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Nastandi.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have continued business, none, bringing us to old business. The first item, update report on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. May we have a staff report, please?
Mr. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Binder. Good evening, Mayor Nastandi and council members. Chris Gary with the City Manager's Office. Bear with me 1 second as I share my screen here.
And Chris, if you can put your microphone a little closer to your mouth, you're a little bit faint.
Absolutely. Is that better?
Not really.
1 moment here. Is that better?
It's good.
Great.
Or
Thank
for
you.
me, it's good.
I will try to speak louder then. And
That's
hopefully that will be
perfect.
That's good.
Thank you. So share my screen and very good. And can everybody see my screen by chance? Great, thank you very much. Great. So as part of the city's comprehensive efforts really to respond to this current environment, this evening I'd like to provide an update primarily on the city's emergency rental assistance program. However, I'd also like to provide brief comments on our partnership to offer community-wide COVID-19 testing, which has also a nexus to our emergency rental assistance program. So this council has seen this diagram before on multiple occasions. It's part of our Unite Palm Desert effort. And tonight's efforts really fall into that second category, which is ongoing staff work, which complements the diversity of activities that have already been completed that are currently underway. So under the CARES Act, the city received a special allocation of approximately $241,000 in community development block grant funds, but otherwise known as CDBG CV funds. And according to the Act, the purpose of this funding source is to prepare for, and also to respond to the coronavirus. And notwithstanding, these funds must fit within the framework of the CDBG program, which includes meeting the national objective of benefiting residents that are low and moderate income, as most of us know, having worked with the CDBG program in the past. There is also statutory requirements as well, but being income qualified and directly financially impacted by the coronavirus pandemic are really the most important criteria for the CARES Act for CDBG CV funds. So thanks to the leadership of City Council, this concept and the funding allocation for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program was approved in late May and is displayed in the staff report. Our efforts to fully develop and implement this program have not stopped since that policy directive. So to recap, the program is intended it's intended to offset missed rent payments for up to $5,000 per household located in Palm Desert. And not only does this program serve as a safety net for residents, but also as an economic recovery tool for rental property owners. So following City Council and HUD's approval of the program, the first step was to select a nonprofit organization that would eventually qualify households for the program, as well as provide case management. And through a competitive request for proposal or RFP process, the city did select the Jewish Family Service of the Desert. The next step was for the city to conduct outreach to rental property owners. And these owners had a limited time to opt into the program for consideration of CDBG CV funds. The city completed an initial application process for rental property owners, which included 19 applications representing about 1,540 rental units. And the city has since qualified and entered into partnerships with 13 rental property owners representing about 1,450 rental properties. In regard to the remaining 6 applicants, 4 of them were deemed ineligible, and 2 of them, 2 rental properties withdrew their applications because their respective tenants actually were able to catch up on their missing payments. So in order to provide equitable service delivery, the next step was to notify the households that have missed rental payments of this opportunity. And so of those 1,450 rental units, there was an identified 130 households as having missed payments since April 2020 or beyond. And those missing payments represent a total of about $248,000. The identified households then had until September 16th to complete an application for initial consideration for rental assistance. And of those 130 households, the city received 66 applications totaling $187,000. Actually, the city received additional applications, initial four applications, I believe, from residents of actually surrounding communities. And although not within Palm Desert, we've already reached out to those ineligible households to really make them aware of the county's program. Excuse me, the county's rental assistance program. So the final step is for the Jewish Family Service of the Desert to qualify each household applying for rental assistance, which includes obtaining and reviewing various types of supporting documentation from each member of the household that is over 18 years of age. And since receiving these applications last week, all 66 households have already been notified that they'll be contacted in the near future by our nonprofit agency, as well as begin collecting the appropriate support documentations for that review in order to continue to expedite this process. In fact, the Jewish Family Service of the Desert's already reached out and began that qualification process for various households. Therefore, we are already really at those final steps, thanks to Council's prudence in identifying and really proactively addressing this community need really early on in the pandemic. And following funding recommendations by the Jewish Family Services of the Desert and approval by the city, rental assistance payments will be made directly to the rental property owners on behalf of all the qualified households. So how does our funding source compare to the volume of applications? So, following the reduction of administrative costs, there was approximately about 173,000 remaining for rental assistance. And as previously mentioned, the total amount of requests is about 187,000. So although we appear oversubscribed by about 14,000, I imagine not all households will qualify, and the statutory requirements may actually limit that amount slightly as well. So therefore, we should really be in a position here to help all rental property owners and qualified households that have already gone through this process with the city. So in regard to the rental properties that opted in the program, you can see it's a range of property sizes, such as the region at 512 total units, all the way down to single family homes. And displayed here is a breakdown of the 66 applications per rental property, including the application requests in dollar amount as well as on a percentage basis. And displayed here is a snapshot of those households from more of a quantitative perspective. Those 66 households represent 169 Palm Desert residents, which really bifurcate into 111 adults and 58 children. And also the household requests for rental assistance really, they substantially range from $570 to nearly $7,000 in missed payments. And the average request is about $2,400. And the median, I think, is within 100 of that as well. Let's see, as also mentioned, these funds are intended for income qualified households. And the average household income is slightly over 29,000. And note that the federal income threshold for lower and moderate income households is about 42,000, which is 80% of the area median income. And again, this is a view of households from a quantitative perspective, but having reviewed every application, I can tell you that many of these households have unfortunate situations causing them to miss rental payments. And notwithstanding, I really hope to share with council these very success stories resulting from this program in the near future as well. So as mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I also like to briefly update the council on our partnership with Borrego Community Health Foundation, as well as the Desert Recreation District, to provide biweekly drive-up COVID testing. This is also part of our Unite Palm Desert effort, and as I said, there's a slight nexus to our rental assistance program, which I'll just talk about in just one second. So since July 20th, we've coordinated 5 testing events that have resulted in 277 residents being tested for COVID-19, in which 149 were Palm Desert residents. And of those tested, there was 12 residents received positive results, and 2 of them were actually required hospitalization. There were also 65 residents tested who did not have insurance and were provided this service free of charge. And actually, everybody was really provided this free of charge. I've yet to hear of one person whose insurance didn't fully cover the cost. And also, ultimately, 17 residents are now signed up for state-funded healthcare through Medi-Cal or Covered California. So through this opportunity, we have people in our community who now have insurance. And finally, we've conducted outreach to notify our residents, including contacting over 90 nonprofit agencies, our affordable housing complexes, our city commissioners, as well as our committee members, and also our rental assistance properties who have opted into this emergency rental assistance program. So due to the success of the first 5 events, I'm pleased to announce an additional 4 testing dates that will occur up until Thanksgiving. And this all just occurred, these new dates just occurred actually today, late yesterday and today, as far as identifying them. So in addition to COVID-19 testing, the community members will also have the option to receive the flu shot. And again, this is free of charge. So we anticipate conducting additional outreach in an attempt to ensure really all of our residents here are aware of these new testing opportunities. And finally, I'd just like to thank Borrego Community Health Foundation, the Desert Recreation District, as well as our city's Public Works Department for their hard work and dedication to facilitate these events. And as always, staff and I are available here for questions. And we have Executive Director Craig Johnson from the Jewish Family Service of the Desert available for questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. That was a great presentation, and I'm really proud of our city for what we're doing to help those in need in our community here in Palm Desert. Are there any questions from staff? Mayor Pro Tem Kathleen Kelly.
This, I will confess, is not a question, it's a comment. Mr. Gary, you commended council for our leadership, but I feel it's particularly important to commend you and the staff for leadership in identifying a source of funding for this program to meet our interests. It's highly representative of the good work that Palm Desert staff does in being inventive and resourceful with great dividends for these important residents. So thank you.
Very good. I don't see anyone else with questions, so thank you again, staff. Discussion? Councilmember Harnick.
I just, basically, it's what Mayor Pro Tem Kelly said. Thank you so much for all this work. And Palm Desert just goes about sometimes very quietly doing these things. We don't make a lot on media. We don't go out and do a lot of that sort of beating our own drum. But what the staff has done is really impressive. And we just quietly go about taking care of our community. And congratulations for all that work.
Councilmember Weber.
Yes, I also would like to thank Mr. Gary for doing this. One of the questions I would have on this is how are we now going to let the public know about these 4 new dates? Is that on our website? How do they know to go there?
Very good question. I believe it may have already been sent out earlier within the last few hours. Actually, I think our communications team is already on it as far as advertising it. Just again, we have a broad range of nonprofits that we work with and have relationships with, and we'll be extending that out to them as well. And also to our city commissioners and committee members, and maybe they can serve as advocates for these types of opportunities as well and let their friends and family know.
Thank you. All right. So is there anything else?
Sabby has his hand up again.
Okay. You know what? These cheap readers from Walgreens gotta go. Okay, go ahead, Sam.
Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and buy you a new pair.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Gary certainly deserves to be thanked with much, much appreciation, thinking outside the box and finding solutions. You know, job well done. But I also want to thank Mr. Johnson and Jewish Family Services. You have a long history of serving the desert. My interaction with Jewish Family Services goes back to when you were contracted through CVAG to administer a homelessness program. It was failing financially, and Jewish Family Services went out of pocket. Instead of earning money on their contract, they paid into the fund to keep it going. And you had my respect ever since. And you're now doing the boots on the ground work and spreading the word and making sure that people are aware of this assistance. And you're doing a great job at it. And I thank you and Jewish Family Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Jonathan. I appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure to work with Chris and the staff. And it's our pleasure to be a part of this program in the service to Coachella Valley. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think staff knows how proud we are of your hard work. So, all right. Unless there's anything else, I believe we're ready to move on.
Mayor, can we take a motion to receive and file the report?
Okay, I'll make a motion to receive and file the report. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. City Clerk?
Councilmember Harnick.
Yes.
Councilman Jonathan.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Weber.
Yes.
Mayor Nastandi.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, bringing us then to the last item under old business, request for authorization to grant Unite Palm Desert Economic Relief Program Community Partners funding to the Palm Desert Area Chamber of Commerce, El Paseo Business Improvement District, and 6 Palm Desert restaurants for outdoor dining expansions. We have a staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Martine and Deborah will handle this.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, joining me is Deborah Glickman, our business advocate, and we're going to do a screen share and walk through a couple of slides with you. Great. Well, in continuing the efforts under Unite Palm Desert, it very much dovetails into Mr. Gary's work here at the city. As you know, we've continued the efforts of issuing emergency loans under the Unite Palm Desert Economic Relief Program, the ongoing business outreach efforts, as was just discussed, along with other things that are happening under this category number 2. The third category, which was approved last City Council meeting, which is $900,000 to help our hospitality sector and to allow for our hotels to offer a buy 2 nights, get 1 free value to our guests coming back into Palm Desert in the near future. And as you know, we've issued, the City Council has authorized the $50,000 to allow the efforts to continue to secure the Palm Desert, the Cal State Palm Desert here in the Coachella Valley. And one of the last items that we've been working on under the Unite Palm Desert umbrella is focus area number 5, which is community partners. And under this section, I'm going to turn it over to Deborah, and she's going to walk us through a couple of the recommended actions for your consideration.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. It's nice to be here. Yes, we have $50,000 earmarked for the Community Partners Program. And the Unite Palm Desert program was initially brought to the City Council. A couple of organizations that were identified were our Palm Desert Area Chamber of Commerce, as well as El Paseo Business Improvement District. And as we've moved through time, we realized a really nice use of the funding could be also to support our restaurants to create dining decks. So I'll go through a couple of slides that give information on what we're thinking and recommending for each entity. For the Palm Desert Area Chamber of Commerce, they are currently running a PPE, personal protection equipment store that they started as soon as the pandemic started, when businesses were really having a difficult time locating PPE. So they have a storehouse of products, hand sanitizer, face mask, gloves, those kind of things. As Martina and I were looking at uses for the community partners funding, Martine suggested, I have to give him full credit for it because I think it's a great idea, that the city give $5,000 to the chamber that would then be used to give out $5,000 worth of PPE free to our Palm Desert businesses. The businesses would not be required to be a member of the Palm Desert Chamber. They would just be required to be in Palm Desert. So we're looking at giving the Chamber of Commerce $25,000 total. $5,000 of that would be for the PPE store to give out free PPE. And then we're looking at $2,500 to support the management and staffing of the PPE store. So that's the ongoing store. As businesses continue to reopen further, and some reopen, they will be needing more and more PPE as they start getting back into the swing of things. The second area we thought would be good to focus on, and this came out of consultation with the chamber, is a Shop Palm Desert marketing campaign. We've heard of a lot of Shop Local campaigns. This one would be specific to Palm Desert. One of the ideas is that $5,000 of the $15,000 earmarked for this portion of the program would go to a banner campaign. You may see the banners around town, around Palm Desert, that say open for business. Those came out of a partnership with the chamber at the beginning of the pandemic. Now we want to do a campaign that says Shop Palm Desert, open for business. So both of those would be on the banners, and the city marketing department would develop the design for the banners. We would turn that over to the chamber. The chamber would be responsible for distributing $5,000 worth of banners to our local businesses. The businesses would be restricted to 1 banner each. Unless there was an extra supply, then they could go back for a second round. The artwork for the banners would be available to the businesses to take to our local printers, so that if they already had one but want more banners, they could actually absolutely access those. And then Also, there would be $10,000 that would be put towards Shop Palm Desert marketing campaign that goes beyond the banners. And that would go to the chamber. They would work in conjunction with our marketing department, as well as the El Paseo Business Improvement District, which will be our next slide. But that marketing campaign would include collateral materials. It would include businesses throughout our city. And we would encourage them to also work with Westfield, maybe put some posters, the Shop Palm Desert posters in Westfield. There are a lot of different ways this funding could be used to promote our businesses. I've been saying in a lot of my meetings, if you're going to go to Home Depot, go to Home Depot here. If you're going to go to any of the stores, you want to go here. Make sure that you use our local stores. The final area we're looking at for the Palm Desert Area Chamber is $2,500 to support the creation of a Palm Desert Restaurant Association. I know that during this time, we have been soliciting, the city is soliciting feedback from our restaurants. We've been reaching out to them. We've realized that if we had a cohesive restaurant association, that would have assisted the process all the way along and assisted our restaurants. So the chamber is a great place to work with that particular sector. The chamber is talking about different sectors right now. The restaurant sector would be brought together. They do outreach to all of the restaurants. They would bring them together for conversations. They would help to inform the city on how we can best assist the restaurants, as well as potentially offer education programs to the restaurants. So that's $25,000 of the $50,000 that we're looking at for the community partners. The next partner I referred to a little bit earlier would be the El Paseo Business Improvement District. We're recommending $10,000 for them to create also a Shop Palm Desert campaign, but that Shop Palm Desert would be more focused on El Paseo. So everyone would be working with our marketing department so that it is a cohesive brand for Shop Palm Desert that just has variations to it, whether it be the Chamber's marketing or the El Paseo marketing. Obviously, the El Paseo Improvement District would be focusing on bringing people to El Paseo, but also keeping them there once they're there. The El Paseo Shopping District already has a number of contracts in place that they could leverage to do digital advertising and a lot of other advertising that could work off the contracts that they already have. So we'd get a good bang for our buck on that one. The final area we're looking at is $15,000 to support 6 restaurants to create outdoor dining decks. Outdoor dining decks, we're starting to see some applications for them. We're starting to see some on El Paseo. This program would focus on the entire city. And each restaurant would be allotted $2,500 to support the creation of their dining deck. We would work with the Economic Development Department, the city's planning department, and finance department to determine the exact criteria for this portion of the program if it is approved by City Council. And that is the bulk of what we're looking at for that $50,000. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm here for you.
Thank you, Deborah. That was a great report. Are there any questions of staff? I need to get my full screen back. I can't see everybody. I think I'm still screen sharing. Let's see, now I see everybody. Okay, I'll start with Councilmember Harnick.
Thank you, Mayor. We talked about doing some design work and also a large PPE program. Are those PPE, is all of the PPE generic, or is it Palm Desert logoed, or what are we doing with that?
As of now, my understanding is they have a lot of it in-house and it is not Palm Desert logoed. We can work with them and possibly put some of the funding to doing a Palm Desert logo on that.
Doesn't have to be, it was just a question.
Thank you. Councilmember Jonathan.
Well, thank you, Mayor. So I have 2 questions. Number one, Ms. Glickman, I really love that this is essentially a contract for services, that we're not just handing it over to a partner, but saying, here's what we expect, and that the work we're asking them to do is very consistent with our objective, which is to help our businesses succeed and invigorate the economy. to that point, because we have specific expectations, what is staff's plan for monitoring the chamber's performance and potentially addressing any deficiencies?
I'm working currently on an agreement to go to the chamber that they would have to sign. We can look at benchmarks, I would say giving a portion of the funding, but then we can look at benchmarks to be met to release other portions of the funding.
Thank you. And I personally think that would be a good idea, kind of a 50% down, 50% upon satisfactory completion of the work, something along those lines, like you would do with a contractor. It's a thought, but the idea is that in some way we monitor performance and agree on certain measurables. Thank you. My second question, so there are apparently the outdoor dining is gaining momentum. And I understand from staff that we already have 13 permits issued. As we roll out, if council concurs, this $15,000 in grants, do we have some mechanism to ensure that those that were first to the party are not penalized in terms of their potential for receiving grants?
Yes, we have discussed this internally, and we don't have 6 restaurants already with dining decks. So we could do retroactive to the couple that are already out there and work with the people who are in the pipeline, and then continue as we get requests. The 13 requests we have and approvals that we have are not all actual dining decks. So we wouldn't have already expended all those funds. But yes, absolutely, we're looking at making them retroactive.
Okay. Was that Susan Marie Weber? Was your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I just had a question. Do we have a time frame on this? Because October's almost here.
A time frame on which portion? The dining decks?
On everything. When we can.
My intention is to move as quickly as possible. I am working on the agreement already. My goal is to get the feedback from City Council and then move as quickly as we can.
Anyone else have a question?
Since staff wants to move quickly, I'll move for approval of staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, a roll call vote.
No,
Wait,
excuse me, for discussion,
Okay,
because there's that part. I really wanted to thank Martin Alvarez, his team, Ryan Stendell, his team, Thomas Soul, because they have laid the foundation for all of these programs and done an amazing job. And I know the councils wanted it, and they have really, really worked hard to get this through, put the pedal to the metal, and they've laid this foundation and it's moving, and I'm so happy to see that. And I'm done. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Can I just echo what Councilmember Harnick said earlier?
Yes.
Palm Desert does its thing quietly, but so effectively and efficiently, and it's because of our dedicated staff. We don't get the big headlines on page 1 of the Desert Sun. We should, but we don't. And what's more important is that we're doing so much to help our business community and our residents, and that's largely in thanks to staff. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Gracie, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilmember Harnick,
Yes.
Councilman Jonathan,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Nastandi.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0 for staff's recommendation.
Okay, so that's all we have for our old business, bringing us to public hearing. And consideration of an appeal of Planning Commission Resolution number 2779, approving a conditional use permit for a 65-foot tall wireless telecommunication facility and a 288 square foot equipment enclosure for SmartLink LLC located at 78005 Country Club Drive, case number CUP 19-002, AT&T-SmartLink LLC applicant, SBA 2012 TC Assets LLC is the appellant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just a point on the great work that staff is doing. This is an item that is a regular, normal item we would do without the pandemic. All of the extra work that you just saw, the last couple items, is extra work by your same staff while they're doing this work that Nick is about to present too, and Ryan. So good job, staff. I agree.
Oh, thank you, Randy, and thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Nick Maloney, Assistant Planner with the Department of Community Development. The item for your consideration is an appeal of a Planning Commission decision of approval for a conditional use permit for a new 65-foot cell tower located at 78005 Country Club Drive. On August 18th, 2020, the Planning Commission adopted Resolution 2779, which approved the project and adopted a notice of exemption with a 2-1-2 vote, and that's 2 votes in favor, 1 no, and 2 absent. The proposed facility would be located in an existing landscaping planter in the parking area of the gas station. The facility uses a stealth design to resemble a palm tree and also plant some additional live palms around the base for screening purposes. Ground-mounted equipment will be located in an enclosure which is surrounded by an 8-foot block wall. The appellant filed an appeal on August 25th, listing 5 grounds for the appeal. The first being that the project would create negative aesthetic impacts on the area. 2, that the applicant should explore alternative sites that are feasible, more specifically to co-locate on a vacant tower, which is owned by SBA. It's located at 77850 Country Club Drive, which is about 900 feet northwest of the project site, was shown there on the screen. Additionally, the applicant or the appellant also cited that the findings of the conditional use permit were inadequate, not supported by substantial evidence, and additionally that further environmental review for CEQA was required. So wireless facilities are allowed in this zone with the approval of a conditional use permit. The Planning Commission determined that the facility was in compliance with the city's wireless telecommunication facilities ordinance, in that by using a stealth design, the monopalm addresses visual impacts through its design as well as landscape screening. In addition, the commission imposed a condition that the applicant plant additional live palms throughout the site, and that would be subject to approval by the city's Architecture Review Commission. The facility complies with height and setback standards established by the ordinance, and additionally, the commission granted an exception for separation distance from existing towers based on the use of an approved stealth design. The tower is consistent with the city ordinance's general design guideline requirements. A Class 3 exemption was used for this project, and that's an exemption for small structures, which is typically used for this type of a project. And that's because this site is already built out. It's consistent with the zoning ordinance as well as the general plan, and there are no unique circumstances or environmental factors which would necessitate the need for additional environmental review. Based on this, staff recommends that the City Council deny the appeal, thereby upholding the Planning Commission's decision to approve the conditional use permit application subject to the findings listed in the draft resolution. The appellant and the applicant are also in the call. They plan to make a presentation. Staff has just informed them that their presentations will be limited to 5 minutes max each. And that concludes staff presentation. Eric Seher and myself are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. City Council, do we have questions of staff? I see Councilmember Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask you, Mr. Maloney, our standards call for a separation of at least 1,000 feet. And this tower does not meet that requirement, the separation requirement. I didn't quite understand, if you could clarify, are there one or two other towers that are under 1,000 feet proximity?
There are two other towers that are in the same general area. They are also within 1,000 feet.
Okay, and in addition to that, our ordinance encourages co-location. So I want to try and get an understanding as to staff's recommendation to approve when we, A, try to encourage co-location, and B, there are two other towers that are within 1,000 feet, which does not meet the guidelines. So what's staff thinking in kind of either setting those considerations aside, or perhaps they're mitigated in some way? What's staff's thinking on that?
The code encourages co-location whenever feasible as a first option. However, if the applicant determines that the site isn't feasible due to a lack of property owner interest or an inability to come to an agreement on the terms of the lease, then we entertain or allow them to proceed with the application for a new tower. On this, sorry.
Okay, so to follow up on Councilmember Jonathan's question, I've been informed that there's a tower about 900 feet away, and it's not considered abandoned. It's not being utilized right now, and that AT&T has not reached out to the appellant on this. And I'm curious again why we aren't pursuing using that tower that's not defined as abandoned. I've been told abandoned towers have to be abandoned for 365 days. Is that correct, Mr. Maloney?
The abandonment provision in the city's ordinance states that if a tower isn't in use for a period greater than 180 days, then it would be considered abandoned. And then the owner of that tower would work with the city on removing it potentially, or finding another tenant. Through the course of this project, the staff worked with the applicant and first directed them to give us a list of all the feasible alternative sites and why they weren't utilized. During the ARC approval, the applicant was directed to work with SBA, the owner of the vacant tower, to explore the potential of co-location. Again, during the planning commission, that same comment was relayed to AT&T, and they were directed to reach out to SBA. Consistently, AT&T has come back and said that that tower is just not a feasible option for them.
And they didn't give a reason why?
I'm going to have to defer the specifics to the applicant, but they've generally said there isn't a master agreement that has to be in place between SmartLink and SBA to allow to facilitate that type of a lease, and they're just unable to reach an agreement.
Thank you. Councilmember Harnick?
Thank you, Mayor. So I really appreciate the questions that were asked by Councilmember Jonathan and Mayor Nastandi. I'm so unclear on why we would build something else when something exists. And I guess perhaps after the presentations by the two parties involved, I'll have a better understanding. But I don't understand the whole abandonment issue. And maybe you can help me understand. And from what I read, and Mr. Maloney, what you just said, it sounds like they really just haven't sat down at the table and tried to work something out. That's kind of what I'm getting from everything I've read. And this was, as City Manager Binder said, this is the kind of mundane, everyday stuff. And that's a lot of mundane reading in here. But yeah, I read it. It just doesn't make sense to me that it doesn't seem like anybody's tried to work through this.
Yes. Well, the abandonment provision is really intended to sort of create like an amortization for a non-conforming use when a tower just becomes vacant to prevent clutter of towers. And that's the reason for the abandonment provision. At one point in time, the discussion focused on that vacant tower, and AT&T made an argument that that tower was considered abandoned per the term of the ordinance, and that's the reason why it's being brought up.
Okay.
Nick, can I try and help a slight bit? Honorable Mayor and council members, we seem to be found between regulations on telecommunication towers on both sides. Both sides argue there's a shot clock that's in play, and staff through that process and advised by Best and Krieger has really tried to focus our efforts on the merits of the application only and try to the extent that we can to stay away from what appears to be a business dealing that we don't have a whole lot of control over as a city. We do encourage co-location. We prefer co-location when that can't be, when it doesn't seem evident that can be found. We're told on one side, AT&T has a shot clock for approval of their project. And then there's also this abandonment issue going on. So we've really tried to narrow our focus on the merits of this application, we are not saying that anything that's been said isn't relevant. We just seem to be stuck in a tough situation with a lot of regulatory red tape around it.
So I appreciate the business references and the basketball references and all of these issues. But it seems to me that while you narrowly focus on, the regulations or however, I'm going to look at the how this impacts the city as a whole, because that's my job. So that's how I choose the lens through which I will be viewing this.
Thank you. So why don't we open up the public hearing, and then following that we can hear from the applicants and maybe it'll shed some light. Okay, I open the public hearing. City Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak on this issue besides the appellant and the applicant?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we do. Mr. Julio Figueroa, I shall elevate him.
Okay.
Mr. Figueroa, you have 3 minutes. Mr. Figueroa, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Figueroa?
Looks like he's muted.
23, yeah.
You are unmuted. Can you hear me?
Hello? Yes. You have.
Sorry about that. I guess I had to dial *6 to unmute, so I apologize.
No problem.
First of all, I will introduce myself. My name is Julio Figueroa. I'm the Director of External Affairs for AT&T. Good evening, Mayor, council members. My comments will be just more in general, not specific to this site, but just in general to our deployment in Palm Desert and in Coachella Valley. I sit on the board of directors for the Greater Coachella Valley Chamber of Commerce and also chair their ledge committee. And part of what I have tried to do over the last couple of years is try to have local government embrace investment in infrastructure, not only from AT&T, but just from the industry in general. Specifically to AT&T, we do have a first ever wireless broadband network that we're building out. It's a contract that the federal government put out a couple years ago, and AT&T won this contract. And this is to basically provide a network specifically and uniquely only to first responders. And so what we have right now, currently, the fires in El Dorado, when we have firefighters out there deployed, they are able to basically be on a network that they don't have to compete with the general user for. So more of these cell sites that we put out there, the more seamless connection that our first responders have. And I don't think I need to tell these folks on this on the city council, but the need for additional coverage and capacity just based on what's going on with COVID as it relates to distant learning and folks just sheltered at home either for work. So these hotspots that these folks in the school districts that are giving out to the scholars, they're not going to work unless these cell sites are placed out there from the entire industry. So as you're looking at these applications, not specifically this one, but just in general, we just ask that you take that into consideration when you are looking at approving these sites, because that's what's needed in Palm Desert and in the Valley, and we look forward to working with our local governments to expedite that and address the concerns for coverage and capacity throughout the Valley. So thank you for allowing me to speak, and great to see all of you.
Thank you very much. Okay, City Clerk, do we have anyone else who's not the appellant or the applicant? I'm a little confused if the person that spoke is part of the applicant process or not.
No, he is not. He's not representing AT&T. We have the two others that are. I shall elevate then the appellant, shall I?
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Henning? Mr. Henning? You have 5 minutes. Mr. Henning, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Can you see me?
No.
I'm going to want to.
Yes, I shall go ahead and allow you to share.
I think I just went into a new mode here. Maybe you can see now. Can you see me?
Yes.
Good evening, council members. My name is John Henning, and I represent the appellant, SBA. I believe that the applicant's going to wind up having a lot more than 5 minutes because they just had one of their own representatives speak for 3, and they're going to have 5 more. And with all the questions that were raised by members of the council, would I be out of order just asking for perhaps 8 minutes to speak instead of 5?
I'm willing to grant that.
Thank you very much. This is coming to you on a 2-to-1 vote. And that's important. Only 2 planning commissioners voted in favor of this project. 2 of them were absent. And I think if all of them had been there, it might have gone the other way. Gregory Pradetto were both absent, and Commissioner Greenwood voted against the project, citing many of the same concerns that the council members are raising. The city really has no reason to approve this project. There's nothing in it for the city. AT&T says they have a gap in their coverage. They can fill that gap with the tower that's already there and vacant. And they've never argued that they don't have the ability to locate on the AT&T tower. It has all the same technical characteristics that the AT&T tower would have. We are obviously more than willing to lease the tower to AT&T. Otherwise, why would I be here? I wouldn't have been hired if we weren't fully willing to lease our tower. So what's the reason AT&T is not calling us? I mean, it really is because I think they can persuade this council to approve a duplicative tower. And it may be a money reason, it may be some other reason, but it's not a true business reason of necessity for AT&T. AT&T has agreements with SBA all over this country. In just the last 18 months, they've had 39 new tower agreements with SBA. Regardless of anything that they want to say about not having a master agreement, they're perfectly capable of negotiating individual agreements. I have 3 other cases in California right now where this very same scenario has played out. AT&T approved proposed a project. The local city officials, either the staff or the commissioners of the city, started to get heartburn about the aesthetic impacts of the project. And so before they actually got to a point where the project was denied, AT&T went ahead and started negotiating with SBA to co-locate on the SBA towers. The cities are Desert Hot Springs, right around the corner from you, Dana Point, and Tehachapi. AT&T has literally approached us just recently in all 3 of those cities after already applying for a tower. So they're trying to get towers approved when they don't actually need them. They want them, but they don't actually need them. Now, I have a few slides I'd love to show if I could. Is that all right? I'll do that. Can I just share my screen? Okay, let's see here. Okay, can you see my slides? Are my slides visible to the commission, to the council?
No.
No,
Oh.
they're not, Mr.
I
Henning.
apologize.
No.
Let me see if I can figure out why that's not working. Just a second.
Gracie, does Mr. Henning have sharing permission?
I do have it. I have it, and it was my mistake.
And here it is.
Here we are. Good. Okay, so here are some pictures of the tower. As you can see, that's a very visible tower, and I think several commissioners have already clearly picked up on that. That picture is taken from the public roadway. It's only 100 feet away from the public roadway. Unlike the SBA tower, which is 500 feet from the public roadway, 5 times as far. Here's another picture. Again, it's right there in front of your face. I mean, that couldn't be more obvious. I think anybody looking at this knows this is not a palm tree. Here's the elevation drawing, which is, by the way, the thing that the permit is going to be tied to. It very clearly shows the arrays protruding from the palm fronds and very visible. You're not going to be able to force AT&T to truly conceal these arrays. This is the distance from Washington, 100 feet at most. 500 feet from Country Club, but only 100 feet from Washington. You have 1,000 homes. Many of them are apartments. To the southwest, single-family homes. You have 1,000 homes within a couple thousand feet of this project. These are people that drive by this site all the time, and they would be affected. This is the SBA tower. It's not pretty, I admit. And the reason is it's vacant right now. We would propose to put AT&T in that location. And when we do, that tower will look a lot better, because in the course of rebuilding those arrays, we would obviously restore the fronds to something much more attractive. Here's how far we are from the public streets. So to the south, the lower part of your screen is Country Club, 500 feet away. Washington to the east, 600 feet away. Our tower is much less visible. There's buildings between the roadway and our tower, unlike the proposal where there's no buildings at all. You're right there in the middle of a gas station parking lot. This is what our tower would look like if SBA and AT&T simply came to an agreement to put the AT&T tower equipment on the SBA tower. I want to talk a little about staff, what staff has said about the shot clock and the abandonment issue. I want to be clear. Eric Seha has said, we do not consider the tower abandoned at this time. As previously stated, the 180-day shot clock began on July 1 and runs through the end of December. So whatever Mr. Maloney may have implied about the 180 days having already gone by, there are 280-day periods in the abandonment ordinance. At most, under the city's own view, only the first 180 days have gone by as of July 1st. We have, even by the city's interpretation, which we don't necessarily agree with, we have at least until the end of December to operate cell service on that tower and preserve our rights. And of course, we're going to do that one way or the other. We're not going to lose our rights. If AT&T doesn't lease the tower from us, unfortunately, we will have to then get somebody else to operate there, or we'll find a way to operate ourselves, because we're not going to lose our vested rights, which we've had for 20 years. Now, this is what happened in the commission. There was 2 commission hearings, and in the July commission hearing, one of the commissioners made a very astute point, which is AT&T trying to hold up, is SBA trying to hold up AT&T and demand $1 billion for this tower because they think if they can get a denial, they'll be forced to pay whatever we want to charge? You know what I said to that? I said to my client, I said, look, let's go back to the planning commission and make a very specific offer that it won't be more than a certain amount of money, so that issue is off the table. SBA is not trying to extort money from AT&T. Right there in the middle of this offer, which is in a letter to the planning commission, which you all have, we specifically offered that this tower would not cost more than $3,500 a month to AT&T. That's less than a lot of people in Palm Desert pay for rent on their house. Okay, I think AT&T can afford it. This is really what you're facing as a council. You have 2 towers that you can either approve a new one and keep the old one, or you can deny the new one and have the old one become the new one. That's really the choice that's in front of you. I would like to just point out some of the points, Mr. Figueroa, I didn't get to respond to AT&T because they haven't spoken yet, but Mr. Figueroa mentioned some things about cell service and first responders and all. Of course, all the things that can be done at the proposed AT&T tower can be done at the SBA tower. And in fact, sooner, because our tower is already there. If you deny this project tomorrow, SBA is going to call, or AT&T is going to call SBA, and they're going to say, okay, you won, we'll go on your tower. You'll have a tower up and running before you know it. Am I
Mr.
running?
Henning?
Yep.
Mr. Henning, your 8 minutes are up, if you could.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll take questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Mr. Henning. Okay, City Clerk, we're ready for AT&T spokesperson.
I think Mr. Henning forgot to stop his screen share. Oh, there it is.
Alexis Dunlap is representing.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. This is Alexis Dunlap. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for allowing me a moment to speak tonight. I am going to speak quickly as I've only got 5 minutes, so I'll try to get everything out. We would like to thank city staff for their tireless work and assistance with this project. And I will add a simple reminder that planning staff has been in support of AT&T's project at every public meeting throughout this process. AT&T was approved by the Design Review Committee, and Planning Commission approved this project at the August 18th hearing. So Mr. Henning's assertion that the city is not in support of this project is unfounded and absurd. AT&T has gone above and beyond all the city's requests of adding new landscaping, including 9 new live palm trees, which is a rather significant expense, relocating 3 existing palm trees to better screen the facility, relocating its equipment to a less visually obtrusive location, adding palm frond stalks, and other recommendations from city staff and the Design Review Committee. I would like to do just a quick recap of how AT&T arrived at its current proposed location. My first item of business when determining the location of a new cell site is to find a location that would fill AT&T's gap in coverage and that is in compliance with local zoning code and jurisdiction preferences. AT&T first looked to all co-location opportunities that would fill the gap in coverage in order to satisfy the city's requirements. I want to assure the council members that the 2 existing monopalm trees were considered non-viable from the very beginning of our site selection process for the following reasons. Number 1, both the SBA and ATC monopalms located across the street from AT&T's proposed candidate were initially ruled out since monopalms are not considered co-locatable. If you can imagine another antenna array at least 10 feet below the existing carrier, you can see that stealth concealment would be completely defeated. And although we disagree with Mr. Henning's alleged dates for his temporary tenant on the existing SBA tower, which I will get into more in a minute, at the time AT&T started searching for a candidate for this project in the fall of 2018, SBA had a live tenant on its tower and thus was not co-locatable. AT&T filed its zoning application in January of 2019, and SBA asserts that it had a temporary tenant on its tower at that time, and therefore co-location was not an option at that time either. Secondly, after AT&T learned that the SBA tower was vacant, which was well after we filed our application, we have explained and provided legal statements that AT&T management and council do not consider SBA a willing landlord. There is not a national agreement in place for AT&T co-location on SBA towers. Please see the letter submitted to the City Council from AT&T outside counsel. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the SBA tower does not currently have a valid permit, and their tower is deemed abandoned per city code and should be removed so that the city does not have unused, unsightly, poorly maintained monopalms in its prime corridor. AT&T has a letter from Sprint to SBA stating unequivocally that Sprint is vacating the tower as of September 30th, 2018. SBA alleges they had a temporary tenant from May through November 2019. However, they have at no time reported to the city that they were changing carriers and therefore would be out of compliance with the requirements from the original CUP to construct and operate California Edison, so there has been no power to the SBA facility after July 2019, further contradicting that my presentation has shown the city that we have really done our homework on this site and ruled out all other possible locations to fill this gap in coverage. We have worked closely with staff throughout this process and willingly incorporated all suggestions up through the Planning Commission's approval of this project. We respectfully request that the city approve this request. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Okay, thank you very much.
I do have a question of the applicant, if I may ask.
Sure.
I'm confused about something. And it's your reason for rejecting co-location. Because I think I heard you say that it's a problem to co-locate if there's another user on that tower. But I've also heard you say insistently that there is no other user, which is the basis for the claim of abandonment. So can you clarify for me whether the problem is that there is another user or the problem is that there is not another user?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question, Ms. Kelly. My comments were initially that the reason AT&T did not consider the SBA tower as a viable co-location is because at the time that we filed our application, they had an active user on the tower. And so when we filed our zoning application, it was not available for co-location. Immediately prior to the design review committee hearing, we received actually we didn't receive a notice. Mr. Henning showed up at that hearing and stated that his tower was now vacant and that AT&T should consider that as co-location. So subsequent to our initial application, SBA is asserting that their tower is now vacated. And so our argument would be that A, we had filed our application with the city prior to the time that the SBA tower was vacant, and that now the SBA tower should be considered abandoned in accordance with the city's code, and AT&T should not be forced to utilize it.
So is there more to this? Because reading this stack of paper leaves a person with the impression that there's more to this, that there's some unstated reason for not wanting to co-locate if it's now possible. And I don't react negatively to that possibility. I just want to know what this is really about.
And I can certainly appreciate that question, Ms. Kelly. I would answer that by stating that, yes, there is definitely an underlying disagreement between upper management, between AT&T and SBA. And so I have been instructed from my upper management, from my clients, that we are not to consider SBA a willing landlord at this time.
That's key right there. Go ahead, Councilmember Harnick.
Thank you. I'm so glad, Mayor Pro Tem Kelly, that you asked that, because I just thought there was something I didn't get, that I was missing something, because it doesn't make sense to me why we should have a duplicative tower. Is $3,500 a month, is that an ordinary cost for this sort of service?
AT&T's average rent for the desert area is around $1,900 a month. We have negotiated a lease agreement with our current landlord for $2,100 a month. So I wouldn't say that the $3,500 is outside of the realm of possibility for AT&T. It is definitely on the higher end, as you can see by our average lease amount.
Right. Okay. So I do have a question for Mr. Henning, please. And the point was made and the pictures confirmed that the tower is poorly maintained. Is that something to be expected?
This is John Henning. It is poorly maintained at this point. When I saw the photograph of it, the first thing I said to my client is, when are you going to clean up that tower? It's not in good shape. And I think what happens here is when a tenant leaves a tower, then there's no income coming in. And so it gets somewhat ignored in terms of maintenance. And I have to apologize, frankly, for that, because it should be maintained regardless, because we're operating it in the city. So I can assure you one way or the other, that tower is going to get into better condition, but I'm not going to try to argue to you that it's a well-maintained, at least visually. I mean, the electronics and the actual structure of the trunk of the tower are fine. It's the fronds that are the problem.
Right.
When you put in a new array, that's exactly the time that you would totally rebuild those fronds to be something more like that simulation that I showed.
Well, and thank you. And I to be perfectly frank, I think most people would agree that the monopalms really don't trick anybody. I mean, we see what they are, but at least if they're maintained well, they are not as glaring, I guess. So I appreciate the question Mayor Pro Tem Kelly wrote, because it's hard for me to understand why someone would want to pull permits, go through the construction process, the time and money involved with those things, moving 9 or buying and then putting in 9 new palm trees when a tower exists. And I will assure you this, there's no one on this Zoom call who will tell you that we couldn't use improvement on cell coverage in this valley. We've all dropped calls and it happens all the time. So we do want it better. But if we try and use during COVID, which everybody seems to like to begin sentences with, to then segue into negative impact statements. The fact is, if this was really about making sure the kids could distance learn right now, you've got a tower up and ready to go. So I'm confused by the whole thing. It doesn't seem to make sense to go through the construction and cost when there's something that exists that could be used and put to good use.
So if we're starting to get into discussion, should we close the public hearing?
Yeah, I need to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and now open it up for discussion.
I think Susan Marie may have had a question, but she was muted.
Oh, okay.
I just had one more question for Mr. Henning. Okay, Mr. Henning, when did the previous company that was leasing your tower, when did they leave?
The lease expired November 2019. I don't know the exact date sitting here. My papers are kind of scattered around, but it was the end of November. It was sometime in November of 2019.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and open it up for council member discussion. Councilmember Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, Mr. Maloney, you did a fine job in your staff report and on your presentation. So well done. Second of all, I will concur with Mayor Harnick that those monopalms, they are just pure ugly, and they get uglier with time. And in this age of technology, and since the companies we're dealing with are technology companies, I know in my heart that they could do better, but choose not to. I'm not sure we're going to rock that world here today, but while I have your attention, we got you. We know you can do better, and we certainly hope that at some point you will fulfill our hopes and expectations. Okay, having said that, as to this application, look, in my mind, it simply doesn't meet the code. And we're granting an exception. It doesn't meet the code in two respects. Number one, not only would it be located within 1,000 feet, but we'd end up with 3 towers within 1,000 feet, not just 2, which is prohibited, but 3. So I think there has to be a compelling argument to overcome that standard in the code. And I've not heard one or seen one or read it in the Planning Commission minutes. I'm also persuaded that the dynamics of that meeting could have gone differently had it been in full attendance, but that's speculation. The other code standard that is not being met is the goal of co-location, which has obvious merits. You have less of those ugly cell phone towers and monopoms, and that standard is not being met. In some situations, you can understand why. You know, it's maybe within 1,000 feet, but it's on 2 different sides of a mountain and they need to reach different areas. Again, I don't see a compelling reason to grant an exception for that standard in the code. I am not interested on the economic intrigue between AT&T and SBA. Frankly, I don't care. In my mind, this application, standing on its own, doesn't meet our code and doesn't meet the bar for granting an exception to the standards set forth in the code. What AT&T chooses to do, for the time being, it's still a free country and a free state, and AT&T can choose to abandon this project, or they can choose to continue negotiations in good faith with SBA. It doesn't matter to me. This is an application that, in my mind, simply does not meet the standards in the code and should be denied. Thank you.
Excellent points, Councilmember Jonathan. I do concur. Mayor Pro Tem Kelly.
So it's starting to sound like Councilmember Jonathan has just spoken for the majority, and I can't argue with any of the factual observations that you have made. I do see it differently in this respect. For reasons beyond us, AT&T does not want to deal with SBA. So for me, the question is, does our usual preference for co-location warrant forcing them to do that? And my personal answer is no. Our usual preference for co-location does not warrant forcing them to do that. I've been in this area a lot, as all of us have. I've never noticed the 2 towers that are there. So I think it's an area where eyesight doesn't travel up to the height of the towers, and 3 within that proximity are not going to be an eyesore. So given that it's a strong priority of this city to facilitate connectivity, and given that it is still a free country, I personally would be prepared to uphold the action of the Planning Commission, which did impose significant conditions on AT&T to assure a project as sightly as possible, because that strikes me as a better outcome than forcing them to negotiate for use of aged infrastructure. That's where I come out.
Mayor, I'm sorry, but just for purposes of clarification, I specifically said that my perspective is that we are not forcing them into co-location, that AT&T is free, and I mean free, to just walk away from this project. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. Any other comments?
Seeing none, I'll throw a motion out there for, I don't know how we would state it in the negative, not adopting the resolution, but instead denying. Do I see legal counsel waving his hand before I make a mistake?
Mute Bob.
Yeah, the way it's teed up is with a resolution for approval. If the motion is going to be to deny, we need to direct staff to come back with a resolution with the appropriate findings consistent with this discussion for denial. And that would be at the, presumably at the next city council meeting on, if we continue it to a date certain, then we don't have to renotice it. So I would suggest that if there is a motion basically to deny, that the actual motion be directing staff to come back at the next meeting with the appropriate resolution to do that.
Okay, I'll venture that motion, but Mr. Hargreaves, let me ask you, is it appropriate in the future? I would have preferred that staff would have put this matter on the agenda in such a manner that gives us the option of thumbs up or thumbs down, rather than belaboring this into two separate meetings and presumably listen to further arguments, which of course we always welcome public input. But the question to you, Mr. Hargreaves, is it possible in the future to just tee both sides up so council can make a decision and resolve it in one meeting?
Yes, I mean, it would be, but there again, handicapping council tends to be a dicey proposition, and it's twice as much work to come up with two resolutions. So,
Yeah, but our staff is twice as fast. So staff, you're hearing at least my perspective. Let's get things done in one meeting if we can, rather than two.
I agree.
Thank you. But the motion is made as you suggested, Mr. Hargreaves, which is to direct staff to come back to us with a proposal for denial and the grounds for doing so. One other quick, and so that's the motion. One other quick comment: if for any reason AT&T chooses to pursue co-location with SBA, then it's my understanding that SBA's tower would go through a rigorous approval process, just as AT&T did through ARC, to ensure that it's a beautiful monopom and none of us can see the actual contraption and we think it's real. Would that be correct, Mr. Maloney?
Yes.
Thank you. So there's the motion.
I would just like to point out that those contraptions are real.
Okay.
They're not imaginary.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we have a motion. Is there a second? Well, I'll second it. So, City Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
okay, let's just for completeness, let's specify the date of the meeting this is going to be brought back at.
Yeah,
October 15th. Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, I'll take a roll call. Councilmember Harnick,
Yes.
Councilman Jonathan,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly,
No.
Councilmember Weber,
Yes.
Mayor DeStandy.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Kelly voting no, and that is to deny and come back with the resolution for denial.
Okay, thank you. So moving right along. Getting dark over here. So now we will move to the Board of Directors of the successor agency to the Palm Desert Redevelopment Agency. We've already gone through the consent calendar.
Wait, we missed
Madam
something.
Mayor, did we miss the council members' reports and requests for action and so forth?
All right. You know what? I've got an abbreviated agenda. I was going to do that last, but having said that, we'll go to Councilmember Jan Harnick to make some remarks.
Thank you very much. I have reports and remarks. Do you want them to, or and requests for action? Do you want them all at once? Would that be easiest, Mayor?
That'll
Okay.
be more.
Okay. At the last meeting, I asked for the opportunity for the council to consider the Salton Sea resolution proclamation and have it brought forward. There's we haven't done that, I ask again that it is on our next menu, I'm hungry, our next agenda. Also, as early in the meeting, Christine Stein said, I asked for an update on President's Plaza at the last meeting, and that's true. I also asked for an update for President's Plaza at the meeting before that. And in April at our meeting, as part of the motion to go forward and go for an RFP in winter on President's Plaza, part of that motion also was that we would receive updates, regular updates on President Plaza. We haven't heard anything since April 16th, 2020. So I've asked twice. It would be appropriate for the council to hear and for our community to hear the progress of President's Plaza. The other thing I wanted to mention is Southern California Association of Governments is going out to do some workshops because there are grant funds available for street projects. And because our Go Human event and San Pablo is so successful, they have asked Palm Desert to present at those workshops about what can happen with those grants and how successful they can be. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Harnick. Councilmember Sabby Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. So just one update to the council and the public. At its last executive committee meeting, CVAG, Coachella Valley Association of Governments, following the recommendation of both the homelessness subcommittee called CV Heart and the recommendation of the homelessness committee, agreed the contract with Path of Life terminates December 31st, 2020. CVAG voted to terminate the contract at that time, and for a one-year test period, take the management of the homelessness program in-house, and with the possibility that it would then be transitioned to maybe a 501c3 organization or a joint powers authority. And if anybody has questions about those details, I won't take time now, but please feel free, whether you're a member of the council or the public, to contact me. With regards to requests for action, I have two. I'll make them quick. One is that recent developments north of the I-10 reawakened our previous concerns about our sphere of influence. Those are concerns that have been addressed and prioritized by the council, but we've kind of let them go dormant. And now I think those concerns are more urgent than ever. I would like to ask that we form a sphere of influence subcommittee, with 2 council members and staff, and I'd like to volunteer to be one of those council members, and that subcommittee explore the possibility, and I understand there's a willingness to form a 2x2 committee with the city of Cathedral City. I don't know if Mayor, you want to address that request before I make my second one, which is very brief.
Sure, and I actually had spoken with Randy Binder about it last week, about sphere of influence and annexation and potential hockey arena that could be located there. So I would like to be on that committee as well, if my fellow council members agree.
I think it's the mayor's prerogative, subject to approval. So I'm not hearing any objection. It sounds like that can move forward.
Well, my objection would be that since 2013, I've been pushing and pushing for this council to address annexation of the north side of that freeway. So I'm very, very involved in this, and I would really like to be more involved in it if we're going to start looking at changing the sphere of influence and actually start working on the annexation.
Well, I'm going to defer to our interim city manager. How do we handle this?
Oh, great.
It's really the mayor's call.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'm going to leave it myself and Councilmember Jonathan, as we both on our own, not in conjunction, approached our interim city manager about this issue.
Thank you, Mayor. My second, and so hopefully there'll be a fairly rapid follow-up to that, Mr. Binder. I know staff is busy and it doesn't mean we need to meet tomorrow, but at least to create that framework and put something on the calendar.
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. The second request, and I don't know if we actually resolved this, Councilmember Harnick, but did we ask for an update from staff regarding Alessandro West? If we didn't, that would be my request, just an update on the status.
Yes.
Yes, you did. At the beginning with public comments, you asked for staff to get back to the speakers on the status of Alessandro West, but we can also put it on your next council agenda as a status report if you'd like.
Yeah, and it can just be an informational item. I mean, and then we can take it from there. And I apologize, that seems so long ago, I've already forgotten.
And if everybody has a moment, just drive down that Alessandro West and get a feel for it.
I just did a few days ago. Okay. So, Mayor Pro Tem Kathleen Kelly.
One quick info item, one request. Many of the organizations that are near and dear to us are trying to creatively reinvent their fundraising efforts. The Joslin Center is sponsoring a televised fundraiser called Joslin in Motion, which is a special performance by Anna Hampton Calloway. It will be aired on NBC Palm Springs Saturday, October 3rd from 6:30 to 7. So I encourage everyone to visit the Joslin website and support this event, especially during COVID. The Joslin has been vital in offering programs to help seniors who are sheltering continue to socialize and be supported. That's my info item. My request is for the Art in Public Places Commission to take a look at a program which exists in Sacramento called Wide Open Walls, which commissions artistic murals. We may not have the wall space to do a program quite as extensive as the one in Sacramento, but I would appreciate it if the commission would take a look at what's been accomplished there and whether it might be a model that we could learn from and adapt in Palm Desert. Thank you.
Can I, on that note, the Unite Palm Desert mural is being painted as we speak on San Pablo. So please, if you get a chance, drive by and take a look. It started today.
Thank you. Councilmember Susan Marie Weber.
I had the opportunity to tour the Riverside County Behavioral Health Project, which took over the old Roy's building. I don't know if any of you have had that opportunity. Holt, they totally emptied out the building and redid the whole inside. Holt did that, and you all know they did the Sunline and the Mosquito District. So you know the quality is just extraordinary. And they already have several people that live there. They also have the clinic that is right connected with it. So that as we've been discussing, as Jonathan has brought so much information forward to us, is for people that are frequently homeless, the issue sometimes is mental. So they're solving two problems at once by having them have a place to live and teaching them life skills, as well as the clinic, which operates separately to bring in outsiders. So it's a wonderful project, and the design has been changed so that the wind isn't carrying the building away. It's very lovely building. I'm sure if you've driven out that way in the last few months, you probably noticed that. I had not. So it was a real treat to be able to see that. And many thanks to Carol Shout, who serves on our Public Safety Commission, for setting all of that up so that I had that opportunity to tour it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Susan Marie Weber, for going out there. Good idea. Okay, then Now it's my turn. I just want to expand upon Councilmember Jonathan's call for action about the Alessandro Alley West staff report. If it could also include perhaps revisiting, getting that project brought to fruition sooner rather than later in their staff report. Randy, does that give enough direction?
Yeah, that gives enough direction. So we'll bring something back at your next council meeting, and we'll take a stab at trying to put a schedule together and giving a status report and as much as we can put together for you. And it'll either be for a decision, probably not, but maybe for the direction or a couple of options for you.
Okay.
Perhaps findings for approval and findings for denial. I don't know.
Okay.
Kidding around.
Wonderful. And now it's your turn, City Manager. Do you have any reports or remarks?
Whew. I had a meeting. Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's been a really gratifying week and a half so far as your interim city manager. I've met with. I've had many Zoom meetings, more than I've had in the last 2 years, 2 months combined. I've been meeting with the department directors. We've been talking about some changes and responsiveness to the public and to the city council. I had a all staff Zoom meeting yesterday talking about job security and ramping up to come back to work and when that might happen. It's been a real pleasure and very gratifying working with the staff that you have here, and the council meetings are great so far. We have, when talking with staff, we've been talking about maybe starting an action plan to reopen City Hall at some point, especially with the changes at the state level with the color coding. And we would like to bring back to the council at your next meeting on October 15th. This sounds like it might be a long meeting, kids, but roll out at that meeting for a phased reopening starting on the 19th of October. And I don't know, I mean, I don't want to talk about the details of that yet, but I'd like staff, we're thinking about it now, and we want to formulate a plan, maybe some options for you to give us direction at the October 15th meeting. You tell me if that's too soon or not, but that's what the plan is. And you know, at the Zoom meeting with all of staff, it was very impressive listening to people's stories about their struggles with life-work balance and the commitment that everybody really has to the city and to doing a good job. And I told them, just kind of made this up on the spot. I said, you know, I'm not here to rock your boat. I am here to blow wind in your sail and to hold your rudder steady and to remind you to keep your eyes on the horizon. So that's going to be the mantra. And I look forward to working with all of you and with your 107 staff members.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Again, we're happy to have you as part of our Palm Desert team. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have to say, as a lifelong sailor, Mr. Binder, you are welcome to crew for me at any time.
Oh, I get seasick. That was just, I came. Thank you, though.
All right. City Attorney, any comments or reports?
No report, thank you.
City Clerk?
No report. Thank you.
Okay, so then we will move on to the regular meeting of the successor agency to the Palm Desert Redevelopment Agency. And we've already gone through the consent calendar. And there were no items held over, resolutions none, new business none, continued business none, old business none, public hearings none. Are there any reports, remarks, successor agency board items requiring action? Executive Director.
That's me.
Mr. Binder.
Yeah, so I was thinking that it would be nice to be able to take these three agencies and combine them into one agenda, so you don't have to start this again and ask those same questions. I think if they're consolidated, you're still doing the job that you need to do without the repetition. And frankly, I've been having so much trouble trying to hop back and forth in this agenda. I have an idea for that if we can make that happen. You guys okay with that?
Yes, I would welcome that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but for this meeting, I guess.
For this meeting, no comments, thank you.
Okay. Successor Agency Council.
No report.
Okay, and chair and members of the successor agency. No report. All right, moving quickly, just going through the motions. Desert Housing Authority meeting. We've already done the consent calendar. There are, let me just flip through. There are no items held over, resolutions none, new business none, continued business none, old business none, public hearings none, and reports, remarks, and authority board items requiring action. Executive Director.
Ditto.
We're back to you again. Okay.
Yep.
Authority Council.
None.
And chairman and members of the authority.
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. Last chance for oral communications. Gloria or Gracie, do we have any other comments to be put into the record?
No, no one else on hold.
None. Thank you.
All right. With that, I adjourn our city council meeting on September 24th, 2020.
Thank you, Mayor. Take care.
Healthy.
Have
All
a good
right.
evening.
6:49 p.m.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.